We all know Kevin O'Connell loves to change his offense depending on who the quarterback is, so what does that mean for J.J. McCarthy? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. Y'all make the world go around. Today is Town Hall Tuesday. That means I'm answering your questions as submitted to me via the Google Doc, which is linked in the show notes to any podcast episode. Or you can, I will post a link as well on Blue Sky on Mondays. Then you can send me your questions, which I will answer on the show, or confess some hot takes, which I'll get to a little later in the show. The first couple that I'm going to answer come from procrastinating grad student, which, first off, dude, come on, get it together, stop procrastinating and asking podcast questions, do your grad student work. But I'll get yours out of the way right away, okay, so you can get back to work. The first one reads, how do you think KOC will adapt the pass game schematically to account for J.J. McCarthy's strengths and weaknesses? How will it look different from 2024 with Darnold, and will it look more similar to Kirk's in 2022 and 23? So the characteristic that was like tailored to Sam Darnold, right? Because like the offense has morphed a little bit depending on the quarterback that has been under center. Even in 2023, when it was like Josh Dobbs and it had to be like hyper simplistic, all the, remember it was like the classic staples because Dobbs had been around to a million different offenses and every offense has some version of slant flat. So we can call you slant flat. We can call you stick. And with Sam Darnold, that meant going for aggressive plays a lot. Sam Darnold likes to be aggressive. He likes to take chances, test windows. He likes to go for it all. And so does Kevin O'Connell. So those two were like peas in a pod, and it can combine to create this hyper-aggressive offense that, like longer developing plays. So Sam Darnold didn't have to read things out super quickly. And let him do his thing where he like manages the pocket and buys time and runs around and makes a cool play. And it worked great. So with McCarthy, his deal is he can absolutely buy time in the pocket. So like the offense doesn't have to be fast. And I think they made investments in the offensive line to sort of solidify that. The offense, I don't think, is going to quicken up. I still think J.J. McCarthy is going to hold the ball a long time by design to a degree. But I don't know if it's going to necessarily be sideline go balls or posts or whatever, right? Like it's going to still be zippy balls over the middle, third window digs and posts and trying to find check downs and clear out space and playing that pure progression game that he's familiar with. So the fit's okay, but I think it's going to maybe be a little less shot play oriented, but I don't know if that necessarily means quickening it up. I think that means using that time to maybe find space horizontally and find easier throwing windows rather than just go for more yards. How that compares to what it was with Kirk Cousins. The Kirk Cousins version of it and the Sam Darnold version of it were actually pretty similar. It's just that the Sam Darnold version of it was a lot more insane. It just clicked the shot play button at a higher volume, and that was more of a game day play calling thing rather than like the shape of the offense. And I think it's going to be the same thing with J.J. McCarthy. It's a game day play calling thing that will ask him to test windows spatially more than it will ask him to bomb the ball downfield. Unless his mechanics do great and he's way better at the go ball, and then they want to call that all the time. Maybe that'll happen too. We can't know. The other one from procrastinating grad student reads, I understand that KOC's offense is a progression style passing offense. What are the alternatives to progression passing, and what other teams in the NFL run those alternatives? So I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe the Bengals and Zach Taylor run an alternative, which is going to be based on reading defenders. So what the McVay style offenses do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Zach Taylor has diverged from that. But what you're talking about progression style is you look at Justin Jefferson, is he open? You look at Jordan Addison, is he open? And so on. With the other kind of offense, this is like the Kubiak style of West Coast offense. Like Clint Kubiak ran this, Gary Kubiak ran this with the Vikings before. And his ilk, right? And I want to say It's a little bit more like that in the more college-y offenses, the Cliff Kingsbury one, or like the Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen offense that they ran is a little bit more on reading defenders. You look at the linebacker. If he goes left, you throw to the right. If he goes to the right, you throw to the left, and it's spatial like that. Absolutely just kind of a matter of taste, two different ways to skin a cat, and there's plenty of different of diversity to that within the NFL, but I would say you could probably divide most offenses into like those two categories. Nolan M asks, what do you think the vision is for Felton in this offense? Maybe jet sweeps to pair with Mason, pounding it up the middle. KOC was practically giddy when the pick went in, so I'm trying to see it through his eyes. So yeah, Kwesi talked about this on Paul Allen. And he was asked, okay, what was it like with Ty Felton? And he said, it was this rare moment where it was the confluence of offensive coaches wanting him and special teams coaches wanting him. So I think the immediate plan for Ty Felton is that he contributes on special teams, and therefore, if he has a long development curve, then whatever. But right now, it's to be wide receiver 4. Congratulations, buddy. You're running clear outs. You're a 4-3 guy that's going to run goes all day. You're doing cardio, bud. And you're going to be fourth in the progression a lot. That doesn't mean you're never going to catch a pass, but that's probably going to be a lot of the role is going to be like dirty work. Or he's going to be the guy that gets the ball, short of the line to gain, right? Jet sweeps, bubble screens, slip screen kind of stuff, stuff like that. Tunnel screens, get the ball in his hands, try to get some yak. But I don't think that necessarily means you have to say, well, we got to get Ty Felton the ball 4 times this game. You're not going to manufacture those touches. It's just that when you want to call a jet sweep, maybe he's the guy because he's got a 40 time. But everybody else on the Vikings has a 40 time too, except Jalen Naylor, who is faster than his 40 time. So the Vikings are not wanting for speed. It's not like they have to put him in to be the speedy guy. I think they hope that he develops into more than he is right now as a receiver. He's going to play special teams in the meantime. But until then, buddy, you're wide receiver 4. Kevin says, if JJ McCarthy fixes the over-rotation mechanics you talked about in last episode, does that basically mean he's 2021 Joe Burrow? Sure, man. 6 Sigma Sicko says, in the spirit of process improvement, what lessons are there to be gained from how the Vikings offseason actually went versus how you anticipated it? What additional considerations or knowledge do you think can be derived for use in your analysis moving forward? I love this question. It's very challenging, but it made me think. So what went different than I thought? Because my main thing was they're going to be really active in free agency, right? And they were. But that was pretty easy to suss out. They had a bunch of money. They had a bunch of needs. They're going to let people go. I didn't think they were going to be quite as serious on the offensive line as they were. And that's because they had a history of sort of being unserious as the offensive line. I probably let Rick Spielman cloud my Kwesi judgment a little bit on that, where they go into an offseason with a terrible offensive line from 2018 that kind of held the team hostage. And then you go, well, a couple of guys are getting healthy and we added Josh Klein, and you kind of just act like that's okay. And I think we had gotten a little used to that. So, don't raise your expectations. But then they got really serious about it. They changed all 3 interior positions. And then, you're hoping you get Christian Darrisaw back. You're not going to replace him. But you even replaced his backup. So even if he does get healthy, you still kind of did something to try to improve there. With Justin School, who's, I would hope, a better fit than Cam Robinson, who was not really a fit, but was what you could get at the time, right? So they were way more serious about O-line than I thought, and way less serious about the secondary than I thought. That's probably the key mistake that I made. I don't know what you can derive from that, because really, ultimately, I just guessed, and I guessed wrong. And I don't think the answer is don't guess, because that's no fun. That's boring. That sucks. To just come onto a show every day and say, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I should at least have some kind of sense, or at least a sense for what that stuff would come down to. But honestly, my biggest regret for this offseason is the way that I approached the draft. I just didn't do enough work. I didn't do as many Patreon videos as I wanted to do. I didn't do as much prospect research as I wanted to do. I didn't even touch positions like wide receiver and tight end, which they ended up drafting. I didn't touch it. I didn't know a gosh darn thing about a single player that they drafted except for Donovan Jackson. And even Donovan Jackson, I didn't complete my evaluation of until a week before the draft. I probably can do better there. And that's more of an internal process thing of how I decide to try to do better. But that's not really the question you were asking of what did I get wrong? Well, yeah, I guessed what position they would prioritize wrong, but I'm probably just going to guess again. And if I get it wrong again, I'm not really bothered by that. What they did in the draft, I mean, I was like pretty convinced that they would try to trade down, but they didn't. They stuck and they picked a guy. I still think I probably would have been happier if they traded down than how I feel with the way their draft is now, because of guys like Savon Revel that fell or Will Johnson that fell. But unlike a lot of people, I'm not going to spend all of my time saying like, God, I wish I had 2 more 3rd round picks instead of this guard. Like, they got the guy they got, and I like the guy. I'm only ever going to complain about that so much. I've got more questions and your hot takes coming up on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are underway, and every night is making your heart stop. The Wolves taking on the Warriors with home field advantage as a 6 seed. We love to see it. So whether you are grambling on more Naz Reid points, Julius Randle, 3-point, whatever, Mike Conley minutes, whatever it is, okay, same game parlays, even in the middle of a game, you can do whatever. You can check it out at FanDuel. You know, you feel the fourth quarter coming and you feel that there's just going to be some clutch Anthony Edwards thing. You can go right in there. The FanDuel app has all kinds of like stats and scores and information that you need to like make that live bet exactly at the right moment. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You can go to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so very much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Let's get more questions here from this Town Hall Tuesday episode. Sketchconk asks, who is the player that you would really love to make the 53-man, but not because you think they will, but because if they did, it would be awesome. Without a doubt, it's Silas Bolden. If he can make it, that means in another universe I could have made it, because we are the same size of person. And I am just endlessly tickled by that. I know that that's not the first time ever for some, like Tutu Atwell and Tank Dell are around that same size, but those guys are testing wise way better athletes than Silas Bolden was. If Silas Bolden just survives to the end of the preseason as a returner in the NFL with NFL guys hitting him instead of SEC dudes, but it would be very, very fun to have a stupid little scamp returning punts, because that's the way he makes the team, is by winning the return job. And it would be very, very fun. I have my reservations about that, considering how crowded of a room that returner job is a hot ticket. And the fact that you basically can't anticipate to get anything from scrimmage from him at all, which is going to be the case for like any undrafted guy. It's going to always have to be special teams. But obviously that means that your case on special teams has to be that much better. Mac asks, the amount of JJ McCarthy slander / distrust in the national media has caused me to circle the wagons way too much. I'm now convinced he's going to be a bona fide day one star. Talk me back onto the ledge. Why will he not work out at least right away? He's a rookie, man. Or, well, no, he's not. He's a second-year player, but he's in his first thing. You are going to see interceptions that you don't like. Mark my words. He will throw interceptions and people are going to make fun of him, and it's going to suck for a little while. It's going to be the growing pains that you go with. And there will be a contingent of people who see a quarterback experiencing growing pains and go, aha, I was right about him in the draft. And you have to understand that the narrative that you will see around JJ McCarthy will always match that person's draft takes, whatever it was. And lucky you, I liked him in the draft. I liked him before he became a Viking. It wasn't even a Viking bias thing. I just liked him. So lucky you. I'm going to be rose-colored about all of it. I'll try to be as fair as I can, but like, it's everybody does that. Everybody falls for that. But listen to yesterday's show. Also, there's a lot of the kind of the problems with JJ McCarthy that made him the 5th quarterback off the board, that made it so that the Vikings weren't going to start him over Sam Darnold, or at least they weren't planning to. That stuff isn't different. He spent a year getting his body back right after surgery, not working on those mechanical things. And so he kind of has to pick up right where he left off, and he picked up like not that long ago, like a month ago, when he actually got fully cleared. So the progress mechanically, physically, bodily is not going to be very far, because it can't be when you're rehabbing. And I mean, look, if you really want to go down the scary road, look what happened to Lewis Seen. He was coming along. He was making some kind of progress. He gets hurt. It totally throws things off. He never recovers. This happens to guys all the time. And whether or not you are resilient to that thing is one of those things you just kind of can't scout in the draft, and you are always taking a risk whenever you make a draft pick. So every team takes that risk several times a year. The Santa Claus in the lobby wants to kill me. I hope that's a Fortnite thing. Otherwise, you're in danger, sir. Says, math with me here. We have an even amount of teams in 17 games. Why would we not allow every team to have 8 home games and 8 away games and then 1 international matchup rather than fool with making some teams burn up a home game while abroad? It seems simple. Yeah, I think we are headed toward something like that. There aren't enough international games. Not every team is not playing internationally every year. That would mean every single team has an international game. And that would mean that every team goes internationally several times. That would be, if I'm going to math with you, that would be the thing, right? You have your home international game, but then who are you taking internationally that also has to play internationally? How do you schedule that out? Feels like a lot to schedule, but I do kind of feel like they're going to try to figure out something like that. That feels like the not too distant future to me, or something resembling that idea. Chris asks, what do you think Brian Flores looks for in a cornerback, and is there a cornerback in free agency that fits this mold? Great question. Is there a quarterback in free agency that fits his mold? I don't know enough about the free agent cornerbacks. I'll let you know if and when someone signs with the Vikings, then we'll talk about them. That's kind of how I'm not going to study every single player in the NFL. Okay. I do a Vikings podcast, not an NFL podcast. I do Locked On NFL, but that is specific to like the topics we're doing that day. Right. But I can tell you what Flores is looking for in a corner. So a corner, an outside corner, has 3 main jobs in a Brian Flores defense outside of like blitzing, run support, those kinds. I'm talking just coverage. Squat or cover 2, right? Your flat responsibilities, your deep third, and your mod. I guess, and off man. There's your 4. So mod, I'm going to also say comprises like palms, because they don't often run just like straight pure quarters. They'll do that like 2 or 3 times a game. But when they run quarters, they run a lot of palms. So that's going to be really similar to cover 2, where you're kind of playing underneath, you're driving on stuff in the line of scrimmage. Palms is just cover 4 that the way I like to describe it is it's cover 4 that can turn into cover 2 if the corner sees the right thing. If he sees somebody stop, if it's a smoke or if it's a screen or something like that, he can trigger downhill. So he plays things kind of underneath, and he plays a little bit more shallow. And then if it does happen to go vertical past him, the inside quarter safety comes over the top and helps, and it kind of morphs into cover 2. Deep third is a little bit more normal, but a lot of that is, so what you want is you want to be able to play in off coverage. There's not as much pressing because they blitz a lot. So blitz and press are pickles and peanut butter. They don't really go together. If you're going to be really aggressive in one part of the defense, you kind of have to make up for it elsewhere by being a little bit more conservative. Otherwise, you're just going to give up a million touchdowns. That's probably not good for a defense. So you want guys that can identify something in the line of scrimmage, trigger downhill, and go attack it, right? You want aggression. And you want guys that hit, which is why I like Andrew Makuba so much coming out of the draft, and not so much like Malachi Starks wasn't really a fit, and the Vikings did indeed pass on him. So I'm going to take my lap there. But with even if he's like good in the Ravens are going to use him in a totally different way than the Vikings would have had to. So already it's apples and oranges. So you're looking for that. You're looking for players who can play in off coverage, and then you're looking for players who are heady. Because sometimes you're going to have to play safety. You're going to have to rotate into deep half or something like that. So you want guys that are smart enough to be able to know when they have to make those kinds of adjustments. The Blind Squirrel asks, will J.J. McCarthy be able to maintain his elite arm strength with the new throwing mechanics the Vikings are teaching him? That's the hope. That's why when I talk, I'm guessing you listened to yesterday's episode or you wouldn't be asking this. But when I talked about that dissociation, you're looking for that. If his hips still turn before his shoulders turn, the answer to this is yes. And if they never get back to that point because of the way that they changed things, then the answer is no. And then you go, maybe they shouldn't have changed that. They should have just dealt with the accuracy as it was. Which like sometimes quarterbacks carry their whole career with habits they got from college because it just didn't matter that much. The most famous one I can think of is Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers had all kinds of weird hitches in his giddy-up that just never got fixed because the ball was fine. I actually think Jordan Love is also doing that. He loves to throw off the back foot, stuff that you go like, a QB trainer is going to be like, I want to get that habit out of you because they want to make everybody into the perfect picture textbook like Peyton Manning. But it works for Jordan Love well enough that they're not having him change it, which I actually think I kind of disagree with, but this ain't Locked On Packers. I've got hot takes. I want to make sure that I get to your hot takes, and there are a couple in here that are absolute scorchers, so I want to make sure I get to them. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, writing stuff on your hand, or any of the other various organizational systems that I tried and failed at in high school. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help you all stay organized without the stress. The sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars like Google, Apple, Outlook, or whatever, and makes it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. If your family is constantly running around like crazy because the kids are in activities and everybody's got a meeting and everybody's got a thing, this can be the solution to keep everything organized and under control. And you can see your whole week clearly on a 15-inch HD screen, so everybody can stay focused and nobody has an excuse. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to be there. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off of their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off of your 15-inch calendar. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/NFL. Moving right along with the Locked On Vikings podcast, it's time for your hottest takes. You've got some scorchers in here, but we're going to start with a few that were a little less hot. And the first one comes from Quasey's mom, who says in 3 years, there will be more 2025 UDFAs than draft picks on the Vikings roster. You're playing the numbers here a little bit, but by 2020, or in 3 years, so by 2028. So basically, this is guys that aren't making it to the fourth year of their contract. Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth style busts. If you pencil that in, I mean, for like 5th and 6th round picks, that's not that bold. That does happen to like a good percentage of them. So that would be like Kobe King, Gavin Bartholomew. Like it's not all that common to see like a Kentrell Brothers, who there's a name for you, who plays all the way through his rookie deal and then just goes and leaves. Patrick Jones, for example, but he was a little bit higher than that. But for like the Ty Feltons, that's team control and a pretty high value asset, pick 102, that you're going to want to try. Like, that's not just like depth fodder. You want to try to get something more out of him. But if he flames out Andrew Booth style, you're kind of already there. And you need like 2 undrafted free agents. There's 19 guys. Somebody's making the team. Like there, you can kind of like just doing the math. There's gonna be like 2 or 3 undrafted free agents that just make the team kind of by default, just because you can't finish a 53-man roster without them. I kind of ran into this when I did the 53-man roster on Friday. So from there, then you get you're basically talking about RFA tenders, and yeah, every year there's always a couple guys getting RFA tenders, guys that are futures deal dudes. I mean, there's Tristan Jacksons the world over, right? So I get it. I don't actually think that take is as hot as it sounds. Hopeful and Hopkins says Luke is wrong, and Ty Felton is definitely worth a 3rd-round pick because of his combination of upside and, most importantly, roster ability. His ability to play gunner, returner, and other special teams roles effectively this year make him valuable compared with the upside his traits and athleticism provides. So it was a very long thing, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I get what you're saying. If he can win wide receiver 4, I mean, if he can win wide receiver 3, I'm wrong. If he is the 3rd wideout on the team and he knocks Jalen Naylor out of that job, I am wrong. I don't think that's going to happen. If it happens, I'm wrong. But that's not even what you're saying. You're saying that just by virtue of being wide receiver 4 and being a special teamer, that's worth a 3rd-round pick. And I think that is just value I disagree with. I just think you can get more out of a 3rd-round pick. You can get, I mean, at best of best cases, you can get Danielle Hunter out of a 3rd-round pick, but you can get Patrick Joneses who play 500, 600 snaps a year. This guy would play like 200. Okay, we're gonna struggle to pass the BB bar of 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 20 catches. As a wide receiver 4. I mean, this is like Brandon Powell is not worth a 3rd round pick. Like you would not if the Vikings traded Brandon Powell at the deadline, you would not expect a 3rd round pick back. Put it that way. And obviously there's like a team control element that makes a 3rd round draft pick, 4 years of him more than, but you get what I mean, right? Like that caliber of player, it would be unthinkable to spend a 3rd round pick on 4 years of that caliber of player. He has to be more than that to me to be worth it. But I get what you're saying that like, okay, Jalen Naylor is, his contract is up at the end of this year. Right. Yeah. He's at the end of a rookie deal. So then Ty Felton takes over as wide receiver 3 next year. That's the vision. Okay, good luck. Does he beat Rondale Moore for jobs right now? Like, is he even going to be that guy? Is he even going to get in from scrimmage yet? And if 3 years from now, he's the clear wide receiver 3 and there's a 3 deep thing and he's awesome and he's getting 700 yards a year as wide receiver 3. Okay. Then I would say, yeah, that's worth a 3rd round pick. But we've got a long way to go to get there. And you can't spend 102 overall on Najee Thompson, man. That's just not worth it. NB says hot takes are anxiety inducing and contribute to the polarization that is so prevalent in our current society. You should do the right thing and change this to a cold take segment in the name of national unity. No. What do you think this is? The United Nations? What is this? A 3rd grade like model UN competition like this? No, this is a sports podcast. Okay. You're lucky I'm not more hot takey. Everybody else is. Everybody on sports radio wants to come out and talk about how Aaron Rodgers is actually going to sign with the Vikings in August. Yeah. You're lucky that I'm not doing that. That I'm not talking about how Justin Jefferson's going to get traded. Okay. I probably shouldn't say that that's not going to come up on this show. Jack from St. Paul says it's a tease. Says rookie tryout invitee Tommy Hill, cornerback from Nebraska, ends up as CB4 / next man up on the depth chart after training camp. That's what I'm talking about. A rookie minicamp winning not only a roster spot, but a real spot in the rotation. Wild to call. Absolutely wild shot to call. If you are right, Jack from St. Paul, like, let's go. That is absolutely insane. I don't know the first thing about him. I'll learn about him if he does make the team. What I will say is the hardest part is getting on the roster from minicamp. Once you get to the 90-man roster from minicamp, you actually have a better chance to make the team than like your average undrafted rookie. Because if you think about it, like the dynamic, you're in rookie minicamp, you've got all the guys you've signed, you've got your 90-man roster that you've actually scouted and you've chosen people. And then you brought in a bunch of random bodies, many of which are only there because they were local. That's the only reason Adam Thielen ended up in Minnesota, or just because they're guys that, didn't get signed anywhere else, right? But they're basically just there to do the drills. The quarterbacks need a couple extra receivers to throw to. A receiver needs another quarterback to throw to him just to make the things run smoothly. So you have to basically change your mind on a guy you were excited enough to offer an undrafted free agent rookie contract. You have to change your mind on that guy because another guy came into minicamp and outplayed him. For a team to make that call, you already have to be like kind of stoked on that guy, and you just missed him for whatever reason in the draft process. And so that's how you get guys like Chad Beebe, who was this, or very famously Adam Thielen, or there's actually like a long history of this happening in Minnesota. So if you can get past that, you got a shot. Scold Outside says, of all the improvements the Vikings have made or are trying to make this offseason, Jordan Mason is going to be the improvement that gives us a deep playoff run this season. Burning clock with a lead, bad weather games, moving the chains, goal line success. I don't think KOC took the run game seriously until now. Cook. Yeah, I think the run game has been taken way more seriously this offseason, not only because of trading for Jordan Mason, he's RB2. This is pretty hot take. It's still Aaron Jones's world until it isn't. But a hot take that I've said on this show before, and I still kind of hold, is it wouldn't shock me if Jordan Mason took the RB1 job. All it takes is for Aaron Jones to miss 2 games and for Jordan Mason to get hot. It's not unthinkable. But also what they did on O-line, directed at the run game, very serious. Finally, this one's a scorcher. Trading in Tonka Bay says, I didn't like Jefferson last year. I know he was great, but he looked soft and physically overpowered many times during the season. So my hot take is Jettis will be under 1,000 yards this season and transferred to Las Vegas by January. Man, Jesus Christ. Fell out of my chair when I read this one. Justin Jefferson, I mean, for one, like first team All-Pro, Pro Bowl, only 500-yard games this time, which I'm going to guess still led the league, but I'm not going to look it up. Still very much a league-leading producer in any sense of the word. If that is not good enough for you, you just need to recalibrate what you expect from wide receivers, because it's about as good as it gets. I think the only way that Justin Jefferson is under 1,000 yards this season, like that world, just by virtue of the Vikings being a high-volume passing offense, only happens if either he gets hurt, which sort of takes the teeth out of your take here, or if Jordan Addison becomes wide receiver 1, like with a bullet, which would be pretty surprising. But if you called it ahead of time, you called it ahead of time. I will say there are the seeds of truth here with Justin Jefferson struggling with like physical coverage. The problem is physical downfield coverage is a penalty. So teams have to perfectly balance being physical enough to stop him, but not being so physical that you get a flag. And I think not many teams were good at that. I think that kind of only the Lions pulled it off, to be honest with you. The Jets didn't pull it off. The Jets were really physical with him, but they got a ton of flags. And actually, if you listen to the way that Jets media talks about Sauce Gardner in that game, they started talking about Sauce Gardner's decline and is he actually good? Because he got so many penalties on that and it like sunk his PFF grade, which, you know, nobody wants to come up with their own opinions. But yeah, you're probably way overreacting to say under 1,000 yards. I mean, that you're starting to talk about KJ Osborne numbers from Justin Jefferson. That'd be pretty surprising unless he gets hurt, which can happen to anybody. All right, I will talk to you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.